Was it you? Someone said, "Oh my God, Miles, you'd be a great audition to be or represent."
Hey, Adam, can you hear us okay? Can you do a sound check for us, please?
It might have been you.
Yep, I can hear you guys.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
You know what? I have every color. And I typically just grab whatever. Well, today they have. It's just whatever. For the majority of the day, I have red.
You can be stylish. If it drops, then what are you gonna do?
I don't need to be stuck.
No, unless you
Take it
really
easy,
get my
Heather.
water.
Let me stand up so you can sit in your seat, and then I will stand in behind you.
I don't know.
Mary Kay doesn't want to hear anything about walking weird. She's already been through that experience where she has her ankle and. Yeah.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the December meeting of the USD 417 Board of Education to order. Looks like we've got a good crowd here tonight. Thanks everybody for coming. We will go ahead and do introductions. I'm Terry Powell.
Tina Ray Scott.
Mary Myers.
Lori Blythe.
Kate Bronquist.
Go ahead.
James Blue.
Matt Siegel.
Soba.
Jay Dornbos.
Tina McIver,
Justice Orbach.
Ashley Iverson, Tammy Dragon,
Lindsay Larimore.
Andrea Messer.
Marcus Hernandez.
Miles Gant.
Jamie Johnson.
Valerie Gear, Kelly Gentry,
Aaron Doty.
Bryce Johnson.
Kelsey Bremer, Heather Herman.
All right, thank you. Consent agenda tonight. That'll be the approval of the agenda, approved minutes of previous meetings, financial report, pay bills, donations and gifts. Option 1 quote for 2022-2023 teacher laptops, renewal of administrator contracts, personnel items, employment, Jay Dornbos, Council Grove Junior Senior High School principal, and resignations, Kimberly Davis, Council Grove Elementary School elementary teacher, Mackenzie Ochoa, elementary school elementary teacher, Martha House, Council Grove Junior Senior High School librarian, Amy Redden, Council Grove Junior Senior High School ELA theater teacher, and Chantel Sheath, Council Grove Elementary School elementary teacher. Anything anybody'd like to see removed from the consent agenda or moved to later in the meeting?
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on that item? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? So passed. Patron forum. Is there anybody who would like to present to the board at this point?
Okay, that's us.
Do we just sit or do we have to go to a special place? Or we just like meeting, like,
Probably better to stand there if you like, but you don't have to go to a special place. Or you can sit if you like to, the room's so crowded.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna sit. Okay, hello, my name is Lindsay Larimore. My husband and I, as well as our 3 children, moved here in July 2021. 2 of our children are currently students of USD 417. Being here today, I hope that the school board will listen to my thoughts and concerns regarding not only my children, but others in the district as well. I pray that what is said here today opens your hearts and minds to seek understanding so that moving forward, we can all work together on the common ground of benefiting our children, the teachers, and the administrators of USD 417. On December 3rd, I co-authored an email to each of you. A follow-up email was sent Friday, December 10th. As of today, only one response has been received. The letter was sent in hopes of gaining understanding on the stances of masks and operational guidelines, the effects of masking in education, and the reality that SARS-CoV-2 is a permanent fixture in our day-to-day lives from here on forward. I want to thank board member Adam Dirks for his response and providing assurance that our concerns do matter, even if it is just to be heard. While I recognize these topics are emotional and uncomfortable, they are also necessary. Growth is not found in the comfortable and easy. Rather, growth is found through hard work, accountability, and open, honest discussions where there is no fear of judgment or being ostracized for our beliefs. So today I come to this meeting to attempt to gain answers from the school board. It seemed to me that deciding about operational protocols was challenging. I recognize information regarding quarantines, masks, staffing, and testing is ever changing and the cause of much stress. In all this conversation, it seemed everyone had some concern, yet solutions were lacking except for some solutions shared by the superintendent. I wonder if anyone else has developed any proposed solutions since that meeting. I, for one, have, and put simply, I want masks optional. Let's think about the numbers. In fact, I did run all the numbers last week. I have it written out. I like math. I'm a numbers person, statistics. I love it. So if you want to look at it, I didn't just make up the numbers, but so I didn't have the exact daily numbers, and I estimated the test to stay at 15 based on the last meeting that I attended. That was the number of the day, so I just kept it for every day. And then I didn't have the full enrollment numbers, so I estimated 350 kids at the elementary school, Council Grove. All the other numbers were pulled from the daily statistics, and that is my understanding that the Dana has been keeping up to date, which I appreciate because I really like data. I ran the formula and wrote it out for Monday and Friday of last week. Positives multiplied by 2, plus in-school close contact, out-of-school quarantine, plus out-of-school close contact, out-of-school quarantine multiplied by 0.5. plus estimated test to learn, I used 15, all divided by school enrollment. Based on the numbers used, both pulled from the spreadsheet online and estimated. Monday, we were at 25% and Friday at 16%. So my question is, what does this mean? What does the data actually mean for USD 417? What do we do with it? What does 25% or 16% of the metric mean if at 5% masks are required and we have been masking this whole time? Are we keeping kids healthy with it? Are we keeping kids in school with it? Are we backing up our own bias? COVID-19 is here to stay. So now what? How do we live with this? Masking, testing, vaccines, quarantine. Some of these I agree with, some I don't. However, I'm here because I want to be part of a workable solution where we work as partners to move forward based in knowledge. I'm tired. I'm tired of answering my kids' questions as to why they have to wear a mask. I'm tired of my kids being told that a mask will keep them safe when all around them, their friends are still getting sick with more than just COVID, and kids still have to quarantine. I'm tired of reassuring my kids that it's okay and normal if they get sick, but they are anxious and worried about it constantly. I'm tired of being told masks and hand sanitizer work when my kids all got the stomach flu twice, despite wearing a mask and using sanitizer almost every time they leave their desk. I'm tired of being told if more people would get vaccinated, then life would get back to normal. I'm tired of people who are not my children's parents telling me, who is the parent, what is best for my children. I'm tired of people with backgrounds in education rather than healthcare thinking they know what is best for my children too. Well, in the last work session, it was said that the school board had no choice in the requirements. They are required to provide a quality education to students. Do you truly believe you are doing that? Are you meeting a level of academic standards of which you are proud of? Are you meeting goals? As a matter of fact, what are the goals? Are we meeting social and emotional needs of our students, or are we breeding fear? Are we teaching students how to think and synthesize information? Or are we telling them what they should think? Are we helping them to become positive, contributing members of society? Are we using control because we, as the adults, are scared because we have lost loved ones from the virus? I have experienced great loss and grief during this pandemic, yet the grief and loss I see happening in my children's lives is hurting me so much more. I am tired of seeing my children being used as pawns. I am frustrated that my daughter cannot see the face of her teacher when she is anxious and needs a reassuring smile. I am tired of children being told over and over to put their masks on when they already have difficult with sensory issues. I'm tired of teachers having to disrupt lessons to be mask police when class disruptions cause delays in learning. Take the masks off and let the children be, and let the teachers teach. They are all good teachers. Lastly, when given the choice of option A or option B, I choose option C. Let's go back to the original operational guidelines where you allow parents to parent their children. You allow parents to choose what is best for their children. Of course, there will still be parents who believe masks are what is best for their children and let them wear a mask. If you still have teachers who believe a mask is what is in their best interest, let them wear a mask. When the county stops the mandate, I ask you to stop the mandate on the children. The mandate tells me that as a parent, I cannot raise my child in a way I see fit. It implies I am not capable of synthesizing information, determining the risks, and proceeding how I see fit for my family. It says you know how to care for my family better than I do. And that scares me because we don't know each other at all. My children are not your children to raise. The job with which you, the school board, have been entrusted is to meet educational needs. Rather than teaching reading, math, and science, I fear my children are being taught through messages about masking, quarantines, social distancing, and other controlling restrictions put on by the school board. This past weekend, my 5-year-old accused my 3-year-old of wanting to get her sick because he coughed by her. She said his germs will make her sick and he needed to go to a different room. My heart dropped. Where in the world did my 5-year-old learn this? And when I asked who taught her that, she said she learned it at school. I said, yes, there are germs and germs can make you sick, but we are family and we need to take care of one another. At the end of the day, we are in the business of the future. I cannot help but wonder if in the future, our children will have been taught to stand up and protect those who cannot protect themselves, or if they will just have been taught to wear a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
I'm next.
Okay.
I'm Tammy Dragoni. I have 3 girls who have been in the school, and right now I have a senior. I'm on the other end of the spectrum because she's maskless at school. And I will say this, she has a medical mask exemption. She has thriving this year compared to last year. She doesn't come home with headaches. Her stress level is way down. She's happy. She's doing well in school. She's doing much better on testing than she did last year by far. I heard a comment in like the work meeting and stuff, you know, that the kids don't mind wearing the masks. They do. My daughter hears this every day, you know, ever since, I mean, she had surgery the second day of school for an appendicitis and she was out that Monday, but the next Tuesday, she had come back to school and she was maskless since then. Okay, so since August. But immediately the kids were like, how do I get that? What form do you have to have your parents fill out for that? They don't want to wear them. That's why you have people walking through the school constantly, put it up over your nose. They don't want to wear them. That's why they're not wearing them properly. I've been told even by, you know, Elle's boyfriend who's over a lot, you know, in class, they don't have to wear it in weights. They don't wear it in PE. And this is at the high school. But, you know, he said like the teachers, if they need to speak, they'll pull it down and talk in class. The kids, if they're answering the teacher, will pull it down to talk to the teacher. I know that my daughter, she has had problems, you know, like trying to listen to somebody, and I do too. I can't hear people when they're muffled through a mask. I need to see somebody enunciate words. That's, just me. I have my own, medical issue or whatever, but, I remember coming into the office and Mr. McDiffit insisted on having a copy of my medical mask exemption to keep on file at the school, which I don't really understand why. It's none of his business. He got to see it, but I don't know why he needed to have a copy to keep. My own doctor doesn't require that when I go to his office, even though it's from another doctor. So anyway, the kids aren't happy with this. They don't want this. I think that, with the learning loss that you've had since 2020 with being on Zoom, kids didn't do well. I had a senior that year, and I know she struggled with the Zoom calls and everything. So did Elle. And she's glad to be back in school, but she's happy that she's free to be in school the way she normally was. Last year was such a struggle with her. I mean, a terrible struggle. Then, we played softball all summer, travel softball. We've played it all fall. She hasn't worn a mask for any of it. They don't require that. The girls she practices with every Wednesday night come from schools all over Wichita that are mask optional. Those are big schools. Dodge City, she has a girl from Dodge City that comes in, they're mask optional. Even with a close contact, they just still don't have to leave school, and they're mask optional. If kids want to wear the mask, they are allowed to. If you don't, you don't have to. They are thriving in their learning that way. And, they're not sick. My daughter hasn't been sick, knock on wood, at all. And, she takes her own precautions. She does do stuff to help boost her immune system and stuff like that. If you ask Dr. Freese around here, the only thing to boost your immune system is the vaccine. My children will not have that. So like I said, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I think masking is wrong. I don't feel like it's helping them at all, especially the younger ones. When they can't see their teacher, a facial expression, they can't hear, see as something, especially when phonics is being learned, to enunciate words, it just kind of drives me crazy, like the double standard. And there is a double standard. It's like, okay, we can take off the mask for a photo, but make sure you put it right back on. Okay, but if you looked at the yearbook last year, like some of the clubs and stuff, you couldn't tell who anybody was. The picture's black and white, it's of poor quality and masks all over the place. What a memory that is for the kids. They already know that masks were in place, but seriously, you couldn't even let them take it off for a club photo. Or when the kids took, what was it, second or third in state for Scholars Bowl, they couldn't even take off the mask for a photo at that point. It's just, and now we can. So it's just, there's just a double standard going on there. But I'm opposed to masks. My daughter's maskless. And like I said, she's been thriving, around everybody else. She doesn't care. She doesn't have to care that she's going to get sick or anything like that, because if she just does feel sick, she knows she'll be home. I'm not going to send my kid to school if she's sick. And that's what we need to get back to. This is something that's not going away. We're not going to get our metric ever to 0. And it's something we need to learn to live with. And, if there are people that really do feel like a mask is going to save them or help them, then let them wear that. But the kids that don't want to wear the one, let them have the choice. Let the parents have the choice with that. I think that that's really important. I have seen a complete change in the personality, the stress level, just the migraines have quit. And that's huge. So skin, just wearing the mask, these kids, for teenagers, the acne part, you can't tell me that these kids actually go home and take the mask and have them washed every single night. Even a paper mask, they'll wear the thing over and over. It'll be on the bottom of a car, on the car floor, and they'll still pick it up and try to wear it. So, it's just that's just more, bacteria and everything else. And I mean, there's studies out showing that a virus is 1 micron. Your masks are 80 microns go through it. With droplets, 62, you know, it's all getting through. You know, when you're in a room 15 minutes with somebody, you're breathing that air, you know, they're doing this all day already. So just let them take the mask off. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, USD 417 board members. My name is Andrea Messer. I'm a wife, mother of 3, and a registered nurse. We have 2 children currently attending USD 417 school district. They are in kindergarten and 2nd grade. I volunteer weekly in my son's kindergarten class. On Sundays, I co-teach confirmation class at St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church in Council Grove. I pick up coaching city rec team when needed, even if I have no idea what a corner kick is in soccer. I enjoy volunteering in any way I can to help shape the youth of our community into respectful, caring, and contributing members of society. Before I share my personal thoughts, I have 2 statements to read from other patrons of Morris County who could not attend tonight. But first, I do need to share with you my discouragement that I encountered preparing to speak with you all tonight. Aside from the typical fear of public speaking for myself, unfortunately, I discovered that somehow a fearful environment has been created around sharing thoughts in our community and at these Board of Education meetings. I am not blaming anyone, but I do ask that as a Board of Education, you look into this honest concern that I have and look into solutions to create a safe and open environment for all patrons to come and speak to the board about thoughts, questions, and concerns. My concern is this, and I did not go looking for this. When I was recently speaking to members of our community about their thoughts on the mask mandate, I found more than 10 families who said in their own words, we would like USD 417 to be mask optional, but we feel we need to remain silent because we are afraid of personal retaliation towards ourselves, our children, and/or our businesses. This is very unfortunate that there are patrons of USD 417 that feel this way. Again, I ask that you please look into this. So I'll read one letter. I can't lick my finger. Okay. So this is an anonymous letter that I was asked to read. Oh. Good evening to all. I am choosing to remain anonymous as I work in USD 417. I know others who have voiced their opinions and have been treated differently. I have many questions for you to answer. As a staff member of USD 417, it is hard to see the kids get upset daily when told to put their masks on 100 times a day. What is the purpose of having a mask mandate if the kids don't leave the masks on all day long? I have a few students who have their masks in their mouth 90% of the time. So you're telling me that it is better for them to suck on their masks than have so many germs on it? How many germs are transferred to the masks when they are touching their masks all the time with their hands? All these germs are now in their mouths. Would these germs have been in their mouths had they not had the mask on? Maybe, but my point is, it isn't helping the matter. They are still getting the germs in their mouth with the mask on. When a student is in quarantine and has not been vaccinated, why do they have to test daily when the ones who have been vaccinated do not? The reason I ask is because I have a niece who was in contact with another student who was positive, who was vaccinated, and she had to be tested daily to attend school. But there were other students who were vaccinated, but they didn't have to be tested daily. If being vaccinated means you are safer, why do they still get it and pass it to others? My next question is, if the masks are supposed to protect us, why are so many students getting sick? How many students were out last week with a sickness? There were many students out with the stomach flu. If the masks really work, why did they get sick? It's because we are constantly telling the kids to get their masks on or to get it out of their mouth. What is the purpose of having a mask mandate when a large majority of the community doesn't wear a mask in public? I have seen many of you in public without a mask on, But here you want our kids to wear a mask every day at school. Shouldn't it, as a parent, be our God-given right to say if we want our children to wear a mask or not? As a staff member of USD 417 and parent, please don't make our kids wear masks after Christmas break. Give them the chance to live a normal life. We are one of the only districts around that are making our kids wear a mask to school. I guess that's another question. When they leave the school, take off their mask and play with their friends without a mask, or go to town and go shopping. What's the difference if the kids go to school with a mask and then go hang out with friends or go shopping without? So please take this all into consideration when you decide for the sanity of your staff members. And this is an anonymous USD 417 staff member. This letter is from Nikki Day, mother of 3 former USD 417 students. Nikki is attending a class out of town at this time, so I'm going to read the statement that she wanted to say at the meeting tonight. 21 months is the amount of time that experts, a superintendent, local school board members, and county commissioners have tried to play parent to our kids. 19 months ago, we decided to take back our God-given right to parent our children as we saw fit and homeschool them. I know that there are lots of other families that would pull their kids from the district over the forced masking if they could. I think most of us believe that this has gone on long enough and want our kids to be kids again without the hypocritical rules. We are believers in our kids hugging their friends and family, sharing germs to build their immune system, and not ever having them in a mask. As a result of this radical behavior, our kids have not been sick during the last almost 2 years. These mandates, which are not laws, only hurt the kids as they're the only ones who are forced to comply. Lots of the adults in our small town, including some of the adults who choose to impose masking rules on everyone, have chosen to live their lives the way they see fit, maskless. As parents of a 5'7", 160-pound 11-year-old who is wanting to play Council Grove football in middle and high school, we will be forced to look into a different option of district for him unless the mandate is dropped. And it remains my choice to mask him or not. As parents of a 9-year-old natural softball player who wants to play in high school, we will be forced to look into a different option or district for her if the mandate isn't dropped, and it remains my choice to mask her or not. As parents of a 7-year-old aspiring track and field star who wants to so badly to run and jump for Council Grove, we will be forced to look into a different option or district for her unless the mandate is dropped, and it remains my choice to mask her or not. A mask optional rule would give the parenting powers back to the parents, where they should have been the entire time. The mask mandates and rules have done nothing but divide this community. Please, please consider giving the medical decisions for the kids back to the parents. And again, that is a statement from Nikki Day, mother of 3 former USD 417 students who are now homeschooling. Sorry. Really dry talking in this mask that long. Okay. Now I'd like to speak on my behalf. I can honestly tell you that I do not feel fear speaking to you all this evening. I'm just a normal mom who would like to share my thoughts with the elected officials who have and will have a hand in molding my child's future. I'm here tonight to ask you as board members to allow USD 417 to finally go mask optional for all. That is when the county lifts the mask mandate. A mask is a form of personal protective equipment. It should be an individual's choice if they want to wear a mask because they are choosing if they want to utilize a mask to attempt to personally protect themselves. I, as a parent, should have the right to weigh the risk benefit for my child and choose whether or not they wear a mask. The large portion of the adults in Morris County have clearly decided they will be making that choice for themselves, irregardless of a mask mandate. But our children have no choice at this time. Please do not give masks a symbolic meaning. A mask does not represent respect or health or illness or compliance. A mask is not a symbol. It is a personal protective equipment. There are a couple studies that show that cloth masks can filter a minimal percentage of the COVID virus if the mask is worn correctly. The problem is majority of people do not wear the mask correctly, children especially. In order for a cloth mask to provide this minimal filtration of the virus, you must wear the mask secured to your face, covering your nose and mouth. You cannot touch the mask. If you remove the mask to eat or drink, then the mask should be discarded and a new mask put on. If the mask becomes wet or soiled, then you must discard that mask and put a new one on. Does this work in a healthcare setting? Usually, yes, but this is not realistic in a school setting. However, our teachers are expected, on top of their full-time job as a teacher, to police this daily. This is evident because if a student tests positive at USD 417, then the teacher must report whether or not that student and close contacts were correctly wearing masks in order to decide who does and doesn't need to quarantine. Have you watched the students wear masks? By definition, they are not wearing the mask correctly, nor is it realistic to ask an 8-year-old to wear a mask correctly for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's no one's fault, it's just not realistic. Now, luckily, our teachers have been doing a fantastic job at giving my children mask breaks. However, these mask breaks usually occur outdoors, and with the cold weather setting in, mask breaks will probably be decreasing. I believe that the benefits of masking my 5 and 8-year-old for 40 hours a week do not outweigh the risks. The students of USD 417 should not be required to wear a mask. Children are the least medically vulnerable and the most likely to be harmed socially, emotionally, and educationally by mandated mask wearing. Please give back choice to parents. COVID-19 will never go away. The virus will continue to mutate. I want to have a conversation about the long-term plan. I spoke with one of you back in August and you said, I just want everyone to have the opportunity to be vaccinated and then we will be done with masks. I hate masks just as much as everyone else, and that is a reasonable statement. Well, we are here. We made it. It's time. We have slowly peeled back layers, and it's time to peel off the masks, please, and move on. When it comes to vaccines, all of those 12 and older have had plenty of time to receive the COVID vaccine if they choose to do so. As of November, a COVID vaccine option for 5 to 11-year-olds was offered. On November 13th, Morris County Health Department held a COVID vaccine clinic specifically for children aged 5 to 11. Those children who, along with their parents, chose to also receive the second COVID vaccine will be fully vaccinated on or around December 18th. One cannot help but notice that the mask mandate and/or masks are not stopping the spread of COVID in Morris County, as our number of positives are, I believe, the highest they have ever been. We need to move forward with a real perceived risk, not just a fear of undocumented transmission. Risk when it comes to COVID-19 in children is extremely low. It is a level of acceptable risk that was acceptable prior to the pandemic when it came to viruses like influenza or RSV. COVID-19 severity of illness in children is extremely rare. It should be a choice on whether or not you receive the COVID vaccine. It should be a choice on whether or not you wear a mask. These things should not be mandated, and there should not be any forms of discrimination or repercussions due to an individual's choice. On December 3rd, I co-authored an email that was sent to the Board of Education members with questions regarding USD 417 mask restrictions. We also sent a follow-up email on December 10th requesting communication to our email. I want to thank Board of Education member Adam Dirks for his response to our email. And I invite all of you to please respond to our email so that we can continue a conversation between board members and parents. In that email, we included some information that we collected about other schools that are comparable in district size to USD 417. In the state of Kansas, we found There are around 25 schools that have a district enrollment that is within 100 students of the district enrollment of USD 417. Of those 25 schools, USD 417 is the only district that still has a mask mandate. And only 2 of those schools have a metric system that is utilized. I encourage you as board members to look at the data we provided in the email and also reach out to these other districts to discuss what has worked and what hasn't worked for them. In closing, please allow USD 417 to be mask optional for all once the county mandate is lifted. Our children should be taught in school face-to-face with educators and unmasked. Thank you for your time and energy that you give to the USD 417 school district.
Others?
I ain't got much to say. I'm James, and I'm not done this mess up. Basically, I think the board is getting too far away from education. You guys really need to bring it back to that. That's just my feelings. You're too worried about public health. And I don't know your guys' score tests or anything like that, but if it's anything from what I've seen across the state of Kansas, they're all going down. This is almost, we've been in this thing for 2 years now. It's time to really focus on education.
Thank you.
All right, well, again, thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. I understand this is difficult for me. I'm used to standing for the podium, so bear with me and also let me know if you can't hear me. I realize there was some trepidation when I requested to speak here tonight, but please understand that I'm not your enemy and I don't consider you my enemy. I hope that by sharing my thoughts and position doesn't mean I'm going to lose friends or even not make friends that I haven't even met yet. It is unfortunate the personal attacks and inflammatory language that has happened during this time, and we are all in this together. That's not some kumbaya sentiment. That's the truth. This is far too small of a community for us to be this divided. I come to you this evening as a mother of children in your schools, but also as a granddaughter, daughter, and sister of teachers. I believe in public education, and I'm so thankful for this district. But keeping kids healthy and keeping kids in school is not mutually exclusive. Sickness happens. And as stated before, this virus is not at its worst with children, and children are actually being treated as sick until proven healthy. Some of you may be thinking, well, Ashley, you don't know what it's like for school to shut down and your kids to have to go to remote learning. Well, this pandemic has not been kind to anyone. In January of 2020, my mother was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, completed chemotherapy, radiation, and a double mastectomy all alone because of this pandemic by herself. In March of 2020, I miscarried twins. My father, a family practice physician, worked the front lines of COVID in Dodge City, Kansas. And in July, he suffered a heart attack while I was with him. I share this with you to convey how I am not immune to the effects of this virus. I take it seriously. But we have got to start helping each other. As noted earlier, we tried to reach out to you and received one response. There wasn't even a thank you for your inquiry. I'll get back to you, or thank you for your inquiry. We'll address it later. Are you being told not to respond, or do you just not want to? That email was a constituent inquiry to elected officials. It referenced our work in reaching out to other school districts and counties comparable to ours. Because Morris County is not Shawnee County, just as USD 417 is not Washburn Rural. Medical professionals seek second opinions. We were looking to see how others are addressing COVID-19. Our county does not have to rely on one person's opinion for nearly 2 years. And that statement should not be controversial. Reassessing things is not a ding on an individual. That's a professional reevaluation that anyone in that realm, medical, law, educational, has to undergo. It's called reevaluating things. Look at our current county numbers, and as one of the very few counties with a mask mandate, evidently masks are not the solution. In an interview with NPR, Dr. Fauci declared it is counterproductive to politicize public health, and I couldn't agree more. When people are treated poorly because of differing opinions, then that is politicizing the issue. We're just asking for some reprieve for those in our schools because the people of this county have spoken through action and referendum. Just as families can make their decisions regarding vaccinations, they should also make their decisions regarding masks. And mask optional is not synonymous with putting our head in the sand or doing nothing. We live in a different world now. We have better sanitation practices. People stay home when they're not feeling well. And yes, now we have a vaccine. Once vaccination became an option, mask mandates drifted away for adults, and they should be removed for our children now. As stated earlier, that local vaccine clinic on November 13, those children should in theory be fully vaccinated by December 18th. Tomorrow, I'm asking the county commissioners to vote to lift the mandate. I'm asking you to make this optional as well. Appreciate your time, and I hope we can work together.
Thank you. Anyone else from the patron? All right, moving on to Spotlight on Education, the Brave Exploration Projects.
I've been on Zoom for a couple of days.
All right, good evening. Oh, I don't know how to make that go away, Bryce. Bryce and I tried this earlier. We weren't sure how to make that go away. It's gonna be in my little. Gonna be in the kid business.
Far left-hand side of the-
Or that. There we go.
Click that to the, see on the far left side, but there you go.
There we go. Awesome. Perfect. All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tina McIver. I teach the 11th and 12th grade English classes at the high school. This is my 7th year here. For the first 5 years in the district, my junior English class was just a junior English class. Everybody took the same basic junior English class. And 2 years ago, in response to looking at our students' IPS plans and knowing that we have some students who want to go to college and some students who are more technical bound, right to work, those kinds of things, I divided up basically, with permission, differentiated the junior English classes. So now I have 2 sections of junior English. One of them is a technical section, and one of them is a more analytical or college bound section. So in the technical section, let me back up. Regardless of which section they're in, the kids do what's called a Brave Exploration project. Brave Exploration is based off of the idea of Genius Hour. So if you have heard that term from Google, populated Genius Hour a few years back, where they allowed their employees 20% of their work time to just be creative, because they thought if we allow them time to investigate things that they're interested in, we might actually find something that's really useful that we hadn't even thought about. And I know from being a teacher, and I'm sure all of you know from being in education and having people in education, not every student is always interested in the same things. And so my goal with this project is to allow the students to have some control over their own learning while still adhering to the standards that I have to teach them. So in the technical section, the Brave Exploration project looks like this. The students use our Zello College and Career Assessment website, and they take what's called the Matchmaker Inventory. From their Matchmaker Inventory, then I ask them to choose a career of interest that they know very little about, but is still within their specific skill set, basically. So if you already know everything about welding, you can't choose welding, but choose something else within that realm that is still an area of interest for you. From there, they have to research their chosen career using the resources that are in Zello and also a lot of other outside resources that the students bring in. They have to locate a video that they watch to help them learn more about their career. And my favorite part is they have to find an expert who is currently in that career field, and they have to interview that expert as part of their presentation. All of that is then compiled into a final presentation for the class. Those presentations, depending on the student, range anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes typically. And I always tell the kids when they get done, if I had told you when this class started, you were going to give a 15-minute presentation, you wouldn't have believed me. But they all do it, and it's really cool. So the goal of that project is really to determine if they are a good fit for that career of interest or not. So that's the technical section. In the analytical section, their project is very different. Their project is called Brave Explorations: What Really Happened. In this section, they have to choose a movie that has a historical element to it. So either a historical element, a historical event, a historical person. They have to watch the movie. They read a nonfiction book and 2 articles about that event or about the person. They also have to find an expert to interview in their field. They compile all their information into presentations. Theirs are usually a little bit longer. The longest one I've had over the last couple of years was 26 minutes long. So they get really long. The kids, I wasn't going to point you out, Miles. I will also say the 26-minute presentations really mess up my time. Their goal is very different. Their goal is to either prove or disprove the way the historical event is portrayed in the particular movie. So very different projects, but very much aligned to the kinds of skills that these students are going to need, whether they're going on to some type of technical education or whether they're going on to college after they leave Council Grove High School. So I don't want to talk about me tonight. I want you to see what these kids have done. So I brought you 2 students tonight. I brought you Justice Oraba, who is going to give you his technical presentation. And I brought Lily Ziegler, and she is going to give her analytical presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to figure out how to get to someone's presentation, hopefully. It's going to be behind that thing. You're up.
Nice.
All right.
Okay, so video game design is what I have. So Ms. McIver recommended that we put a quote at the beginning of our presentation that lines up with the career that we chose. So the quote that I chose is, "Changing a habit is never difficult. Difficult is to address your unwillingness to do it." So the career that I chose is video game design. After reading through the assignments on Zello and the matchmaking things and everything, I ended up with that as my chosen career. And what do they do? Video game developers design, make, and combine storytelling and technology to create immersive experiences for game players. Crucial skills and abilities for video game design: patience, having well-developed patience and self-control when things do not go as planned. Unassisted, being comfortable with working on your own at a desk. Responsibility, being responsible, staying on task, and meeting the deadline. So personality traits. Being creative, it is good to come up with the most unique ideas that people love. Being determined. Determination is very important if you want to make it to the end. Self-awareness, it is important to notice when you are getting stressed and to stop it. Curious, it is good to stay curious of the possibilities. Training and education. Working in video game design requires people to have completed associate's degree or vocational school program certificate in software design, computer graphics, animation, or a related field. Most companies want someone who has spent a considerable amount of time on playing and designing games. So earnings, Chuchaco, that's the word we use in her class, but most starting video game designers make between 34,000 to 45,000 yearly, and experienced earn around 100,000 to 130,000 yearly. So workplace hours, usually work around 40+ hours a week, work for companies from large to small, can be self-employed, can work in large offices with other people and at a desk. So some pros and cons. Some pros I found is creativity, originality, animating, making the narrative story, publishing your own creation to the world. Some cons from my point of view is back pain, possible stress, learning to code, and possible headaches. And this is a short video of design in action.
We're gonna make the small level design in Unity, which is super short. And this video is made possible by all of our Patreons that are supporting the channel and this content. So if you guys enjoy and want to see So in this video, we're gonna make the small level design in Unity, which is super.
Okay, this is some research I did. We read 2 articles and summed it up, basically learning 2 different things, one from each article. This article states that the video game designer career is a reliable career to pursue because it is growing consistently. Making sure that the career you pick is reliable should be one of the most vital things you research before moving on. The article gave some good advice, including putting time, research, effort, and practice in as much as you can on your free time, because doing so will give you the ultimate head start that you will need to get ahead of the competition. Getting ahead of the competition is very important because there are countless people out there trying to get like ahead and make their own games and stuff. So the article 2, this article gives an overview of narrative designers' work in the video game design career. It said that the narrative is the most exciting subject in this career, and the reason is because the narrative designer makes the story behind each character, and they decide how the character will be playing and the reason they are doing what they're doing. This can be fun if you are a creative person and like to explore your imagination. The article also gave examples of websites that will give you a good idea of what being a narrative designer is like. Understanding what you are getting into is very important so that you know what to expect and prepare yourself for. So some vocabulary that this job would know is engines, a program used to assist video game making, agent, an in-game character or object that uses AI to interact with other objects in its environment. Clipping, the process of predefining certain areas in a game in which rendering occurs, which optimizes game performance in those selected areas. Asset, a shorthand for anything that goes into a video game. For example, characters, objects, and FX, maps, environments, etc. Bugs, any development issue that makes a game unenjoyable, unstable, or unplayable in its current state. So, person I interviewed was Nye Warburton. He is cheerful and gave good advice. He is a very high up graphic designer and animator. He helped animate over 30 movies, and he is a teacher at a video game development college on the beach of Savannah, Georgia. So he has a lot of experience in video game design. So the first question that I asked him in the interview was, does this job ever get boring from all the repetition in the work?
It never gets boring. There are frustrations, especially with code. You work for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you press compile to try to create an executable, and it breaks. And then you're like, why is this not working? And then there are so many factors that could be. The character rigs might be breaking. The code is not refactored correctly. It could also be managerial. It could be the users. I mean, there's so many different factors. So it's not boring, but it will tear your hair out a little bit.
Okay, the second question I asked him is, would you actually get to watch the game come together bit by bit if you worked at a company?
It depends on the size of the company. And it also depends on the philosophy of the company. Every company is different. Larger companies will kind of put you into departments. And then depending on how the department is run, you will be, sometimes you are just isolated in your cube and you're just doing a small little part. Sometimes there's more camaraderie with the team where you can actually be more actively involved. One of the things so AAA gaming is really cool, but I also like independent stuff. 2 or 3 people can come together and they can make a game and they can ship it and they can put it on their iPad or whatever it is. There are smaller companies where you wear more hats, and then yes, you are actively involved in watching it all come together. In fact, so much so that if you don't do it well, then you don't make money. So in a big company, you're a little bit more isolated. Your paycheck shows up every 2 weeks. Maybe you're not as involved in the top level, but in a smaller company, you're more actively involved and the stakes are higher, but you do get to see it all come together.
Okay.
Depends on the.
So based off of my Zello assignments, the things that I like in the career is creating music and sound effects, writing the computer code that controls gameplay. But what I like very much is working for video game production companies or self-employed, working indoors from office or from home, designing characters, backgrounds, and other parts of the game's look, developing plots, text, and dialogue. Okay, so personal reflections overall is I think this job is a good match for the interests and skills I have. It would be a way for me to express my imagination into a world of my own, to teleport anyone who desires to a place of my creativity. The skills required to create those places are exactly the ones that I have or desire to have. Overall, I like the concept of video game design. It is at the top of the list. So that's it.
Good question.
Yeah.
How long does it take to design a game, typical game from start to finish like that?
If it's it depends, I guess, what type of game it is. But if it's like Fortnite, for example, because a lot of people know that'd probably take like at least a year and a half with a big group of people doing it together, because even just updates take like months at least. So yeah, it's crazy. Takes a lot of effort.
So what I didn't tell you is the second half of this project. So this all happens in first trimester. Second trimester, the kids come back or third, depending on when they come back, and they have to write a research paper. So in the college class, their research paper is very argumentative based. They have to choose something that goes along with their project that is arguable, and they have to use scholarly evidence and all those things to argue something about their topic. In this particular class, in the technical class, these students do a lot more research about themselves. So they become their own research subjects. They take a Myers-Briggs personality inventory. They take a lot of other inventories where they learn things about themselves. Their research paper that they write has to argue whether or not they're a good fit for the job that they actually chose in the first trimester. And what Justice realized through his research is
that I don't like this career because after going over it and reevaluating everything and taking other personality tests, before I took the other tests, I realized that there is a lot of being alone at a desk and just typing, and that's just like you're on your own, just typing your stuff, and you need to know what you need to know, otherwise it's not going to be done right. So I don't know, since I'm an extrovert, I found out through the tests, I didn't think that that was a very good match because I like people and I like my family, and that wouldn't be very fun just to sit down at a desk all day with my back hurting. So yeah,
Maybe you need to be on a team of people.
yeah, that would be better.
Yeah.
Start your own company, design your own game.
Yeah, yeah.
Good job. Great.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. We're gonna switch gears now, and Lily's gonna talk to you about the Rwanda genocide.
All right. The 1994 genocide, what really happened? A little bit of background about the Rwandan people. Rwanda during the 1990s was made up of two particular social groups. They were called the Hutus and the Tutsis. And the Hutus were a class who farmed crops, and the Tutsis tended to the livestock. And right around this time when all of it went down, cattle became much more valuable than crops. So the minority group actually became elite in Rwanda. And there were feuds among the parties quite often regarding the reality that the government was primarily Hutu dominated. And the Rwandan president, Juvenal Habyarimana, agreed to a peace agreement that was backed up by the United Nations to help the cause. What caused the genocide? A genocide is defined as the mass murder of a targeted group of people or ethnicity with the intentions of completely destroying the group of people. So in the case of Rwanda, it was the issue that the majority group of Hutus had with the minority group of Tutsis. And on April 6, 1994, the Rwanda president was shot down from a plane by a missile with unknown origin. Obviously, this led to the agreement of the Hutus that the Tutsis needed to be exterminated. The start of the genocide began just a day after the president's death, going on to show that this was all premeditated, and they just needed an excuse to begin. A couple of questions that I had going into my research was what caused neighbors to turn against each other so quickly? Why was there little to no media coverage on the genocide? Why did the national community refuse to intervene? What started the Rwanda genocide? Why was the genocide premeditated by the government? And what happened to families that were split between the Tutsi and Hutu ethnic groups? My movie review, I watched the movie Hotel Rwanda. It's a historical fiction from 2004, and it was originally adapted from a screenplay. It's in the point of view of a Hutu man, Paul Rusesabagina. Sorry. The movie plot is based around Paul. He's the manager of a hotel in Kigali. During the genocide, he housed over 1,000 refugees, including both Hutus and Tutsis. And he went through several hardships to keep his family alive and together. They were actually a split family. And Paul saved several lives with his intelligence and his nimble thinking. He conversed with the owner of the hotel and means of receiving help from anywhere they could possibly get it throughout the whole movie. Paul is torn about the whole situation, but refuses to leave his family. He thought of himself as their protector. Women and children were often brutally beaten to death on the side of the streets. So Paul was afraid that this would happen to his wife and children if he died. So he actually told them that if he dies, he wants his family to jump off the top of the building because that would actually be better for them than to live through the rest of the genocide without him. They had an escape. He loads his family up and several others, but last second he jumps from the car to stay behind and help the rest of the innocent Tutsis who are being slaughtered. Eventually the car is ransacked at a roadblock, but Paul's family survives and makes their way back to the hotel, so they're kind of right back where they started. Although the movie was fiction, several nonfiction aspects that also answered several of my questions were incorporated. Some of these included why the media coverage was so low, and it was actually because when people were sent to cover the topic, it was so dangerous that they were immediately sent right back home because there was no way that you could send somebody into this disaster. Why was the international community, why did they fail to protect the innocent people of Rwanda? And they were told not to technically intervene. They were supposed to keep the peace, and there was actually no peace left to keep because
it was thought of as like a civil war because both sides were from Rwanda, but they couldn't really do anything about it. And why exactly neighbors turned against each other so quickly? And it was because it was basically just like yourself for yourself. Like there was nothing to it. It was so dangerous to be out there. Here's a clip from the movie.
Oi. Oh, Begwa, what is going on now? You've driven off the road. No, I'm on the road. Stop, you're going to put us in the river. Stop the car, stop the car.
I know it was a little bit hard to see, but how do I read full screen then?
Oh. Just click on the full screen
I made it
mode.
not full screen though. Okay, sorry. I know it was a little bit hard to see, but basically they thought they had driven off of the road, but they were driving over thousands of dead bodies. My book review, I read the book Left to Tell. It was an autobiography from the point of view of a Rwanda genocide survivor. The book was written and split into 3 sections: Rwanda before the genocide, the author's coming to God, and her rescue and life afterwards. And this little section over to the right of your screen is an excerpt from inside of the book that I thought was interesting, so I thought I'd include it. It says, Left to Tell is a book for those who struggle with seeing things as eye for eye, while also including pictures and experiences of a genocide survivor. Before the genocide, Immaculate Ilibagiza, I swear I practiced that like 1,000 times before, and I knew I was gonna mess it up. She grew up comfortably wealthy as a part of the Tutsi ethnic group. She lived with her mother, Marie Rose Kinkidi, and her father, Leonard Ugulukia Kindi. She has 3 siblings by the name of Aimable Nukukangwe, John Marie Vinay, Kazeneza, and Damascene Jean Muhirwa. Immaculate always perceived Rwanda as a beautiful and luscious land to live on. She was aware of the tension between the Hutus and Tutsis. However, she never felt threatened or unsafe due to it. In fact, she had several friends from both ethnic groups. Her coming to God. When the genocide began, she was separated from her family. She and 7 other women were hidden away in a small bathroom in the back of a pastor's house. They stayed there for over 90 days, seeking protection from the mass murders going on in Rwanda. During these 3 months, she taught herself English with only 2 books and a dictionary. She frequently informs the reader that the only way she kept her sanity was by talking to God for hours upon hours. As she is cloaking herself in secrecy, she is allowing herself to forgive the Hutus for the mutinous hatred, which I found really interesting because I don't know if I could do the same. After the genocide, after about 91 days, all 8 women moved to a safety camp in France where the risk was immense. There was even a part of the book that Immaculate traveled, or she revealed that she walked through plain sight in front of several Hutus, yet somehow they didn't see her. She believes that God protected her. And she also learns that during her hiding, all of her family besides one brother were killed. She plays an important role at the refugee camp as she is one of the only bilingual women. Her life now. When the genocide was completely over, she decided to return and take control of her life back in Rwanda. She got a job at the UN and met an American UN worker who was there working to set up the criminal tribunal. She later marries this man and goes on to become a motivational speaker and author who focuses on forgiveness of others despite their hatred. She often speaks on the subject of her being able to forgive the men who destroyed her homeland and even forgiving the men who murdered her mother and brother. Left to Tell and Hotel Rwanda were similar in several ways. One similarity between the 2 was that they both accurately portrayed the gruesome and horrible murders that happened just along the streets of Rwanda. They also had quite a few differences. One major difference was that the main character of Hotel Rwanda was part of the Hutu ethnic group, so he was less worried about his own survival as he wasn't being targeted. And on the opposing end, Immaculée was a Tutsi, so her key focus was her own survival. I read 2 articles. The first one is Rwanda's genocide, what happened, why it happened, and how it still matters. This article was written and published on Vox in 2014, and the article gives information of why the genocide occurred, as well as statistics taken over the 100 days. The Rwanda genocide was a directed, premeditated attempt to eliminate an entire group of people. This resulted in the murder of over 1 million people. The killing started just after the death of the Rwandan president, Juvenal Habyarimana, who was in the plane shot down by a missile. Before his death, Habyarimana agreed to a peace agreement enforced by the UN. However, once the news of their Hutu president's death rolled around, the Hutu ethnic group started their extermination of the Tutsis. Starting on April 7th, Hutu militiamen went door to door slaughtering Tutsis with guns and machetes, and they were killing at a rate of about 8,000 Tutsis per day. My second article was Lessons Learned from the Rwanda Genocide. This was Professor Omar Magdoum from the London School of Economics and Political Science, where he addressed more than 1,000 guests comprising student, faculty, staff, alumni, and members of the public at the Ngugi and Kongzi annual lecture series, which was held virtually by SMU on September 10th, 2021. More than 1,000 guests attended this virtual lecture to gain knowledge and listen in on what students should have foundationally set into their education. Professor McDoom suggests that genocide is a very predominant and independent topic, as it is begun by a decision made by the regime or the government to discontinue a relationship with another group. In the case of Rwanda, the Hutu ethnic group refused to stand any more of the Tutsis, so they began an extermination campaign that took place in Rwanda in 1994. The violence that took place improved the world in several different ways. Many new international foundations were created to prevent any other country from experiencing the same hatred that the Tutsis did. I then interviewed Zilpha Irakoze. She was a child of 2 survivors of the 1994 genocide. Her parents were 25 and 30 at the time. She was born 3 years after the genocide ended, and Zilpha is currently attending KSU, but her parents live in Kigali. She's 24 years old now and loves to share experiences and stories of her life to help others. These were a couple of my interview questions that I had. My questions were, how have time and coverage changed your views? Have your feelings towards other nations who were but unable to help changed or remain the same? And in your opinion, how has media changed people's feelings on the genocide? Is the majority of the media portrayed how it is during the genocide? How did being a child of survivors affect your personal life growing up? And what is the hardest part of the genocide to understand? I asked her 2 of these questions that I thought were significantly important. So here's the first one. What was the hardest part of the 1994 genocide for you to understand when you were young?
Because it's like they were taught that Tutsis were not peoples, and you can see it manifest in the way that they were killing them. Because if you were told since you were born that Tutsis were snakes, they were cockroaches, you kind of like totally completely that inside our body is a person. Even though this person truly fed you at some point in your life, this person gave you water, gave you milk, you used to live well with this person, right? But the more you think of them, which is why it's important to preach humanity, because the more you truly do not believe that a person is a human being, the more it is easy for you to like be able to do anything for them, you know? Yeah. So like the humanity part had left their souls, and truly what they were doing was killing snakes. And think about if you were killing a snake, you would kill it anyhow, right? Like you would truly do anything. Because it's like they were.
My second question was, being a child of 2 survivors, how have the effects of the genocide personally taken a toll on your own life?
I don't know any of my grandparents, and it would have been kind of cool to like, you know, get to know them. So a lot of family members were missing in my life, you know, that I didn't. I'm fortunate enough to like still have my parents, but like a lot of orphanages in my family, uncles and aunties that I didn't get to experience. I can't tell you necessarily what it is to like have a granddad, because both my granddads on my dad's side and mom's side were killed during the 1994 genocide. So like, just there is such a huge gap of like family that you don't get to experience for once. For one, I mean, like, you don't get to see all these people because they were killed during the 1994 genocide. And then you find a lot of families taking on a lot of kids that were left without parents. So you see a lot of orphans in your family, and I guess you see a lot of people struggling in your family because once again, the breadwinner, whether that was a man, was killed during the 1994 genocide, and you can't help but like see everything kind of like coming to light. And then the big thing is honestly the trauma that's kind of passed on. So things that our parents got to experience was intense. Like, so for instance, my mom, so my auntie, who's like my dad's sister, would during the 1994, she just doesn't talk to anybody. My dad does not eat some kind of food because his dad was killed when that kind of specific kind of food was being cooked. I don't know any of my
My personal reflection. Though I learned many important details and read many stories and accounts from the genocide survivors as well as the exterminators, the most important thing that I learned from my interview with Zilpha was that she immediately corrected me on the topic after I called it the Rwanda genocide. This event was named the Rwanda genocide by those who refused to accept the real tragedy that happened in those long 100 days. Giving it this name suggests that it was the Tutsis against the Hutus, like a civil war, every man fighting against every other man, and this was not the case at all. The correct way to address the event is the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Tutsi were being targeted by Hutus in an attempt to exterminate the problem from Rwanda. This was not a civil war at all, and those who believe it was have not been thoroughly educated on the topic. Zilpha described it almost as an insult due to ignorance. Over 1 million Tutsis died over the span of 100 days. Even those who made it out of Rwanda during the time still faced hardships and murders. The Hutus were inhumane souls whose only mission was to get rid of all Tutsis, so it is truly unfair to say that the Tutsis played just as big of a part as the Hutus did. Like Mrs. McIver said, I now have to write an argumentative essay. And I went with my first topic, was the 1994 genocide beneficial for the rest of the world? It sounds crazy, but it did create several new organizations and kind of teams put together so that this doesn't happen to anybody else. And that's all.
Get a picture of you real quick. Being here tonight. Thank you for your time. Good job. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick question.
Thank you.
How did you find your guys' people that you interviewed? How did you find those
Oh my gosh. I think I just looked up Rwanda genocide survivors. So
They found one at K-State, huh?
Well, actually, strangely enough, Tina Ray is always really great help on this topic because she knows everybody everywhere, I'm pretty sure. But a lot of times what I do is I just start from my network and I start reaching out to people. There's a lady in my swim class who worked at K-State who said, hey, have you contacted the International Student Association at K-State? And I was like, nope, but great idea. So Lily crafted an email to the International Student Association, sent the list of questions that she wanted to have answered. They responded. They reached out to some of their students from Rwanda and they said, does anybody want to help this? And Zilpha responded right back to her and those two got connected. This guy over here, we looked up colleges basically that had these kind of programs and we messaged the college, and then the lady at the admissions office said, oh, I know the perfect person. And so it's a lot of connections of people who know people who know people. Probably one of my favorites from last trimester, honestly, is I had a student who did a project on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she said, hey, do you think I could email her daughter? Her daughter's still living. And I said, good luck, but yeah, go ahead, and her daughter responded and they communicated. We didn't get a video interview with her, but her daughter communicated with her through email and answered all the questions that my students had. So people are really great to help students. I always find that especially because we're reaching out to people who are super passionate about the topics that we're reaching out to them about. Typically, as long as they can make it work, they're going to make it work for us. And we have had some amazing interviews. So that's my favorite part of the whole thing, is the fact that the kids get to connect with somebody who is passionate about a topic that they are also very passionate about.
Great network.
So, yeah.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is reports. Anything to add? We'll start over here. Gonna slide around. Good. Bryce?
I've got a couple things, imagine that. Real quick, I want to get the pulse, once, after we get to the new year and we have the new board members take seat. I'd like to have a time where we can get together and maybe do some team building activity, and then have maybe a working session where we normally do our goal planning for the admin team. They kind of encompass that all together, maybe go to Manhattan if we can find a venue where we can have a working supper or something and get together and do something along those lines, where just to kind of get to know each other and have a team building opportunity, plus a working session where we can work on our goal session setting and then bring the admin team into that portion as well. What is that sound? What's the pulse of the board on that, and time frame and timeline to do that? And I know that will probably be the biggest challenge to get everybody together on an evening, but I think it's worth the opportunity to try to do.
I mean, from my perspective, obviously, if we go, and I'm all for doing something like that, let me preface it with that, but from a time period, I guess I would say if we could go toward the end of basketball season, maybe before spring stuff really
Maybe
fires
between those
up,
two.
that might be kind of the sweet spot from a time perspective, where there might not be quite as many evening activities that would interfere, but I'm one of 7, so.
I would put this suggestion on the table just for something as a consideration that possibly we patronize our own community. I don't know.
Yeah.
I understand leaving. I get that too, because then no one's, we can just have a time together, but just a thought.
Well, the part of going out of town was more for the team building aspect. There's venues there that create opportunities for that, so that was the main reason by looking outside of Morristown. But that doesn't have to be something we do either. We can just keep it as a work session and do it here locally. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, it's just a thought.
Yep. Other thoughts?
Okay. Well, if you have any thoughts on that afterwards, just shoot me that in an email. I'd like to take, we had a great district site council meeting last week, and I think there was some great information shared. And so I asked Kelly if she would just take a moment to kind of relay some of that. And one of the pieces that I found very encouraging, we're seeing some of the greatest gains historically in our elementary students for MTSS reading data. And I think it's a very positive thing to show a lot of good things are going on in our buildings, and a great meeting that we had. And so I'd asked Kelly if she would just kind of take a few minutes and submit some information to the board. So it's not everybody to be able to be part of that meeting. And so she agreed to do that graciously. So I'll turn it over to her to let her kind of give you a quick overview of things.
Well, it is really good data, and we are very excited. As everyone knows, it's been a hard year and a half. And I think what we've had to continually do is fall back on what research tells us works and what doesn't. And the number one factor in student achievement is direct instruction. That's it. And so kids being away from direct instruction caused some gaps for us. And our biggest gaps have been in grades 1 through 3. The present 3rd graders were the kids in 1st grade that missed that last 9 weeks completely. I mean, we were sending home packets, but as 1st graders, that was very difficult to teach someone how to read in that situation. So the data that we look at for those age of kids are our benchmark screeners. So As all of you know, we screen for reading and math and behavior at the last 2 weeks of September. We will again in January, then we will again in May. And in September, our benchmark scores for reading at those grade levels was very low. A lot of children below target. So we moved fast and did a lot of things very, very quickly. And I cannot commend the team more because it wasn't just one thing that was put into place. The board approved the purchase of really high quality evidence-based materials for reading that we supplemented the core. The teachers changed their schedules. The principals were involved in that. It meant changing people. It meant changing a lot of things. So we supplemented the core. We got materials for interventions. Those were regrouped. We have a new title staff that are just knocking things out of the park. Our title staff is really wonderful. I want to personally thank Krista Wilson and Angela Harris for the work they've done in leading our work in reading. So what we do is we make AIM all the kids that are below target. We take where they are and where we want them to be and draw an AIM line. And for whatever we measure, we're using a progress monitor, whether it's sounds or words, nonsense words or words in a passage. We make a graph to see if we can get them to close that gap in the right amount of time. So we plot points once a week, how many words they know, how many sounds they know, that sort of thing. And third grade, for example, we have 32 students who were below target. We have several that have moved from below grade level. They've moved grade levels. We have even more that are right on their AIM line. We only have 4 right now who out of that 32 who are below their AIM line. And we haven't had results like that in our MTSS process ever. We've got the same kind of data for second grade and in both schools. So I just wanted to commend everybody who's worked so hard on that. Math, we're also getting some really good results. So when the team works together and they're given the proper amount of time and direct instruction, that's the main thing. We're really seeing some fantastic results. So thank you for the investment you've made in the materials that you allowed us to purchase. Because it's really made a difference. And we're so excited about winter benchmark. We've all got our fingers and toes crossed, but it's not just luck. I mean, we have the data that tells us it's gonna look much, much different than it did in the fall. So thank you for all your support.
Kelly, would you quickly like to remind everyone where they can find long-range plan information and assessment information on the
Yes,
district
the
website?
District Site Council has a page on our website. And there's a lot of information on that page, and that's open to everybody. It gives the rules for district site count, our bylaws and who's on it, and our meetings, our minutes, and our agendas, and our long range plan, which shows what subjects we study. We study each subject in a cycle, and it has all the long range plan is there. We've got resources for parents that are on that page. Our assessment schedule, what grade levels, what kids take which assessments at which grade level. So yes, I would be thrilled if people wanted to look at the district site council.
Are you doing that through January? Aren't you doing spotlight on education?
Yes. Yes. So in January, I will be bringing the updated long range plan to you, and I will be doing a review of each subject. We do that once a year in district site council, where we go through each subject and in detail tell you what's happening at each subject in our district. We don't stay static ever. Something's always in the process of being updated or put new in place. So I'll be giving that update in January, and I look forward to going through that with you in detail. Yep.
So she'll be our spotlight on education.
Might it be possible during that update to let us know what the winter benchmark data looks like, or
the
will you have
January
it yet?
meeting will,
Okay.
I think it's the night that we open.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yes, yeah.
Then real quick, you see just
some stuff, branding, a couple of these at your deal, get these out to people, have them in schools. The more places people are sticking stickers and recognizing our brand and our school district, the more conversations we have, the better off we are. So we'll get some from Prairie Heights Elementary School, just haven't come in yet. So sorry, Twisters don't have one yet. But Braves and CG and all that, you'll see them around. They'll be in stores if they'll take them for people to grab. So just the more we can get people to recognize our brand, and the more people that will have our logo out there on their coolers and their tailgates and their refrigerators and all that, the better off we are. So that's the purpose of those. Then lastly, I want to take a moment to say thank you. We do have 2 board members who are ending their term with us. And so we want to just recognize their service and dedication to the students and families of Morris County and USD 417. So we have some very amazing Alexander artwork plaques that they have created for us to show a small token of our appreciation and thank you to Deidre Knights and Scott Bankers for their service on the school board. So thank you, Scott. You're not here, but we're giving you a virtual round of applause as well. So thank you. So you'll get one of these too, Scott. We won't ship it to you. So if you're in town sometime, stop by and grab it from the district office if you would. And then Deidre, since obviously you're here, we'd like to present yours to you in person tonight. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you.
At least I didn't cry.
Anything else? Our board members have anything to? All right, on to informational items. Patron concerns for the mask mandate public health policy. Ashley, I think that was you. Do you have anything else, or did we get?
I think we got everything.
Okay. All right, very good.
Thank you.
Next item then is the NSBA annual conference.
That's the National School Board Association Conference. It's time to register again. We did attend one year, I think Deidre and Tina Ray went 3 years ago before madness happened. So now it's open back up again for registration. So let's hope it happens again. So I know Deidre or Tina Ray expressed some interest in going again this year. Just want to see if there's anybody else that has any interest in attending. It is, what's the dates again?
April 4th through the 6th.
April 4th through the 6th. Thank you. In San Diego this year. So if you're interested in that, want some information on it, let me know. I can send that out to you. We probably need to have information by the end of. Jamie?
Aaron, I'd be interested if you can get me some information. I'd like to learn more about what I'm going to be doing. Sounds amazing.
I'll shoot that
I've
to you.
never been to California.
Let me know so we can get registration taken care of and accommodations for that as soon as possible.
So a couple of really cool things about NSBA this year. The president elect is Frank Henderson, who is from Topeka's 501 School District, who is actually going to be inducted as the president of NSBA while we're out in San Diego. And the former director of operations for KESB, Dr. John Hine, has taken the position of executive director for NSBA. So we're going to have some Kansas ties and would really appreciate the Kansas support. And they're really going to focus on what Kansas has been doing to promote public education. And so I think it's going to be a really great opportunity for Kansas to shine on a national level. So.
Well, it's a great opportunity to learn about things what we don't know. For instance, that's how this position came to fruition. It was through a session that Deidre sat in and came back and said, no, I heard this really cool thing. Is there something we could do? And we talked about it and said, absolutely, that's a great idea. So a lot of good things happen there, a lot of great sessions that we get out of our realm and see what goes on in some other realms, and listening to some school board members in New York and other places, you start really appreciating rural Kansas and stuff. So a lot of good sessions.
Professional development for board members.
Absolutely. So email me and that if you could within the next day or two. So I think the registration deadline is coming up here pretty quick to get the discounted rate, otherwise it goes up with cost.
Okay. Moving on to discussion items. KSB December 2021 recommended policy updates.
All right, so there is a packet Bryce gave you in the board agenda and the board packet that talks about the recommended updates. The best thing to do, obviously, in reading those is go to the page, the cheat sheet that talks about what the changes are, instead of trying to read them all through. This is just discussion only. We always bring it up and discuss it, and then you'll vote on at the next meeting whether you want to adopt them or not. The only reflection that I would consider you guys having on, if not adopting, there's two policies that I think are geared more towards larger districts, and historically, after visiting with Bryce and him looking up past agendas, there's two policies you have not updated over the years. And that is the purchasing date DJE policy and the buildings and grounds policy KGA. Primarily just because I imagine the reasoning in the past has been we're a smaller district, these aren't issues in our district. Sometimes policies create more headaches if they're not suitable to your culture or your system. So these two particular ones, purchasing, right now reads the purchasing, receiving, storing, and distribution of supplies, equipment, and services for use in districts shall be managed efficiently, effectively, and economically. So basically, it's our job to make sure things are handled correctly and done correctly. The new policy really restricts some things. For instance, I think, like, for instance, we have, a high school has a Sam's Club account. Well, if someone would purchase something on their own, even though they paid for it, they cannot do that with your approval. So if someone would use a Sam's Club account or the district Walmart account or district Amazon account, and they purchase something personally on that, even though they paid for it, you have to have board approval for that. But we're so small that that oversight happens organically anyhow. There's not any really way someone could fraudulently take advantage of that. The other one is buildings and grounds usage. So it just basically anything that is done, for instance, if we ask Mike to go down, maybe Adams, we have a great partnership with Adams Lumber. Let's say they come down and bring their forklifts to help us unload a truck. Well, maybe their truck breaks down, we need to take our snowplow down there and do it. Well, we could not do that without your approval. Or maybe someone needs to borrow a district trailer for something and we approve them to use it for that. And that can't be done without your approval. So those things, again, happen organically anyhow, and we govern those and monitor that. So not a real need for doing that. You haven't updated those since July 1998. So I imagine there's a reason why that has been passed over every year. And that's the only thing we could really come up with in looking back historically. So those are the only two I'd say they really don't need to update unless you just want to, and it's not a big deal if we do. It just kind of makes things more of a process to do. And then the rest of them are pretty much all, except for the IIA, the performance-based credits. That one you have purposely not adopted in the past because of test out procedures that allows we have done that individual cases, but we keep it by individual cases. What this policy would do is if someone wants to test out of, say, 5th grade, then the teacher has to create some sort of matrix and rubric and test to do that, and it has to be, the process has to happen. So that's a lot of work that I hate to go to a teacher and say, hey, someone wants to test out of 2nd, 3rd grade or 5th grade or whatever, come up with an assessment, come up with a test, and you got to grade it all by this timeline. I wouldn't be happy if that was asked of me as a teacher. So this allows us to manage each case individually if that happens. I would suggest we do not adopt IIA either. And you have not adopted that in the past, and that's, from what I understand, those are the reasons why too.
Okay.
Anything else on the price?
So like Aaron said, if you review those and see something that needs to be changed, or sometimes it's just a comma.
Yeah.
Marty White. So if you see something like that, go ahead and send those in and we'll get those taken care of next time. Next item, appointments to district site council and Greater Morris County Development Corporation.
So we can table this if you want to the next meeting when we have new board members that take seat, or you can appoint now if there's someone who's existing that wants to have the opportunity to serve on those. That's totally up to you. I just want to get on radar as obviously Deidre's on our site council and Scott is on the GMDC representative, and so those will expire then at the end of this month. So we can wait till the January meeting, or we can go ahead and do it now if there's those who are currently sitting on the board who want to have those opportunities to experience.
Mrs. Gentry, can you just remind everybody when the district site council meets and about kind of what time commitment that takes?
Not in a pandemic year, but in a normal year, we meet about 5 times a year on a Wednesday from 8 to 11 in the morning. So not every month, but we average about 5 meetings, 4 or 5, 8 to 11 on Wednesday. It's not always the second Wednesday. We used to try to do that, but now we've got so many other things going on that it does shift a little bit. And it is one that once you're there, it really isn't appropriate to come and go. it would be a commitment of 8 to 11.
And attendance is crucial. There's a board report that the member gives and gives things from a board perspective, and also, as Deidre's done, brings staff information as well from a board perspective, listen to, and it contributes to that conversation that we have. So it's an important position.
I've done it, Deidre's done it.
I mean, I'm interested, but I don't know about the 5 times from the 8 to 11.
It's a commitment.
And is it a commitment for how many years? Like, is it, do we
All
look
of
at
them.
that every year? I know, thank you, Terry. I shouldn't have asked it that way. For the rest of my life.
The community and parent members are, and the teachers serve 3-year terms. But the board is a permanent position, but it's revisited every year. And so I would assume that at the end of the year, if you felt like a change in your job situation, you wouldn't be able to do that, then it would be, you don't have terms as a board member. It is up to the board to send a representative to the council.
And do you have the 2022 Wednesdays yet decided?
Oh, Mary. Myers.
Oh, okay, well,
No, ma'am. I mean, I could, but honestly, they depend a lot on the special education
right.
co-op board meetings, because I can't, we need Aaron. So it's a lot to plan around his schedule, actually. So I'll have him in June.
Well, I'm interested, but
When's the
I
next,
don't know.
when's the next meeting?
The next meeting is March 9th, I think.
Well, we can keep it on the agenda, and if we get to March and we don't have a representative
March
yet,
9th.
we could temporarily have someone who's available until we can get a permanent.
Well, and don't we normally assign these kinds of things in like the business meeting in June, July timeframe? So really what this one would be somebody from now through summer.
I can tell you the spring meetings.
That
I
was,
can
a-
do
that
March.
was an- I could.
I can do March 9th.
Yeah,
And I think it's May.
but I hate to take away an opportunity if someone's
May
running-
11th.
running to the meeting.
I also serve on the insurance committee and the health and wellness committee. if you want to replace me.
We're not talking insurance. No more this year.
Oh,
Doesn't it?
and negotiations. Four committees.
Is part of this a change because of the fact that we've changed when the board members are elected?
Yes.
Normally it wouldn't take over until the July meeting, which is the business, technically the business meeting, but that's all shifted now. So
And by we, that was the
State.
state
Right,
state
legislators.
legislature, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So Mary, did you want that May date,
May 11th.
May 11th?
I'm putting in that margin.
Because I don't see anybody trying to arm wrestle.
Well, I mean, it just sounds fun to me.
We will need an negotiations representative, but this is the cycle for negotiations year. I don't know what the
We
meeting
have not
schedule for
been
that
meeting
is.
because
It's been
they
kind of-
met is Tuesday.
Scott, you got something?
I was just saying, do we need a motion to table this? I would wait until the new members come on, to get their opinion.
I don't think we need a motion right now, it's just a discussion item, so I don't think we're making any
Okay.
long-range calls, but it is on people's radars now, so. Yeah, well, if somebody wants to arm wrestle you, we'll set up the
Yeah, I
table
mean,
next month up front.
seriously, if someone-
Yeah, I didn't hear, then I'll do it, so.
The other important thing to note is that if you sit on negotiations, you have to go through negotiations training in order to serve on that committee. So,
Which is another state law.
yeah.
Okay, well, we'll bring back up and everybody be thinking about it. We'll bring back up in January because we got time.
Scott, was there anything else you served on that maybe we don't have on the list?
I don't think so. That was the biggest one.
Okay. If you think of anything, let us know.
Okay.
And I think GMBC just met, you know, what to do.
Okay.
So,
All right, moving on then, to masking policy options.
So just to continue the discussion, from what I took from the last meeting, just kind of want to recap, just make sure my notes reflect what the thoughts were of everybody. It seemed like the pulse was if we do a scorecard, it's using the positive cases only. It's kind of seemed to be the majority of the pulse of what we talked about for everybody. So I'll refine that as we continue to have that discussion and see what happens in January. And then at the January board meeting on that Wednesday following the Tuesday county commissioners meeting is when you can decide if you want to adopt something like that or not adopt it at all. So I'll refine that, send it out. But is that, that's what my notes reflected as I went back and read everything, looking towards just the positive cases only. If that option B is still part, if we did that.
Marcus, I just want to make a point. In the paper, you made a comment that I mentioned pre-K through sixth grade. It was pre-K through sixth grade was the way that it was listed on the sheet, but it's pre-K up through age 5 because those are the kids that can't be vaccinated. So just want to make sure that that was quoted directly with regards to the children that do not have an option to be vaccinated.
Okay, all right. Any other follow-up questions for Aaron or comments on where that stands? All right.
I have a question. What gives us any kind of indication that they'll lift it in January? I mean, I haven't been part of any discussions with any county commissioners or anything, so I don't really know where that came from or where that originated from.
There's just I know it was discussed a couple of months ago. I think there's a possibility that it could get discussed again. We were just trying to be a little bit ahead of the game.
Well, yeah, nothing is indicated they're going to lift it. The only reason I brought it up is because that's when the next time to reevaluate it. So that's the date we'll know whether that's the first opportunity they have to either end it or continue it. So that's the only reason I brought it up, is I don't want to wait until our board meeting in January to react to if they do drop it. That's why I said multiple times, if or when it is dropped, because that is the first opportunity they have to discontinue it or continue it. So I don't have a pulse of what they're going to do either. I just know that that's the date they can decide what they can do. So I want to be ready for that as a school district and assist with you all to move forward past that, instead of having to have meetings at the 12th hour figuring out what we're going to do.
Adam, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. That part that Aaron just said, I didn't know that. I didn't know that it had been, I didn't know a date had been discussed at all. So
The county commissioners discussed that in their November, one of the early November meetings.
okay, yeah, I must have missed it. So thank you for filling me in.
Anything else on that? All right, then we'll move on to action items, additional positions.
And I apologize, I meant to email to you today. We finalized, or not finalized, but we edited the job descriptions, and I meant to get those out to you, but I haven't been back to my desk since our admin meeting today, so I haven't had a chance to send them out. So let me pull those up for you so we can see them. We'll find my drive here. Okay. So the first one, let's start with, I guess, the assistant, go in order here, assistant technology director position. So again, the premise of this one will start, the baseline of this is a person that will be a conduit between the IT world and our classroom teachers that will work to help support the software platforms with teachers and interfaces that we use. So if a teacher has an issue with uploading their roster into a particular program, this would be the person that would be the expert, so to speak, and how to help them do that. That's the premise then of that kind of this was built upon, and then they'd also work closely with the instructional coach to provide some PD opportunities for staff who want a better learn program or a tool that we have, or resource that we have, whether it's Google Classrooms, whether it's Google Drive, whether it's Zello, whatever it may be, of the plethora of programs that we have that are all web-based now. Pretty much everything we do is technology-based, and that's just the way the world has gone for our programming and the resources that we have. They will work with that person to provide those opportunities. Then it also stems into some of the things that are currently happening that Tori needs help with, that he currently receives from Ann, that we have as a part-time temporary position to help address some of those concerns that he has. And this would consume that position as well, those duties as well. So We kind of revamped it quite a bit today. Basically, the essential functions of those three things: act as a liaison between the technology department and classroom teachers, providing technical support and appropriate training in conjunction with guidance, and direction for building and district leadership. Number two, oversee and maintain the district technology repair help ticket system, prioritize repairs, ensure timely completion of requests by district stakeholders, and providing ongoing communication of status of those requests. And then the last one, work with a technology director to update, repair, install, and maintain both hardware, software in the district as assigned by the director or superintendent. So that's kind of the big picture view of all the things. I mean, the list was, as you know, a mile long, but this kind of all encompasses all those from the 30,000 foot view. Then we kind of drill down and get a little more specific in the general responsibilities, but it's not all encompassing. You can read those. I won't read them to you, but I'll email this out to you again, but we can read through them. You can take a minute, read through them right now independently if you want. I'll give you a few minutes.
Okay, so I'm gonna be that guy. This person would report to Tori or be equal to?
Report to Tori.
Okay.
Salary range schedule on this, it will be an hourly position because they won't qualify for the matrix of number one, that probably they won't make enough in the yearly to pass the test for exemption from wage and labor. So it'll be an hourly position, but if you equate the hourly to what a salary would be, it's gonna be a high range depending on experience of probably 40, 42 or 3 depending, and low range depending on experience of somewhere down in probably the mid to low 30s. So this isn't going to be a Tory type person. We're not requirement. It's not a certification in IT. A requirement. It's not a degree. It's someone who either already has a grasp of it or is willing to learn and be taught. So allowing for flexibility of that range. So no, it would not be a Tory level. We wouldn't turn that person down, but
right.
We need to show this job description to Joseph Orloff.
Yeah.
Would this person be in the building as much or less than Tori?
Yeah, excellent question. Hopefully more. The part of this discussion on this today would be a student support person as well. I'm not excluding Tori from that, but someone who could be in the building, maybe on a scheduled day. It's hard in the IT world to have a scheduled day. So use that term loosely, but having time where they're there, hey, as a student, have a problem, we check in on. Having time for, if you're having issues with your Chromebook or you're having issues getting into a program you need to. A lot of times we discussed today at the elementary school, those things happen, but the teachers take care of it because it's harder for an elementary student to articulate that or go seek that out. High school, obviously, is a totally different beast, and junior high where you guys can. So also maybe some good opportunities for some of the things that we learned about today, justice about, maybe that could be some mentorship there going on too, and maybe some organic help. The problem with having students, like in a lot of large school districts, have students who do some of this work, that the regular classes that are set, so you can count on regular scheduled help. Ours would be maybe we get one student one semester in a tribe who's in a class that can do this, but then they're not the next, and then we're left with a hole. So there's no consistency in having that. So that's why employing someone's good, but it doesn't mean we don't still offer opportunities like that happen through that process. So yes, in the building, hopefully more. Great question. All right, questions on that? Anybody? Okay. The next one then, let's go to the assistant principal at Council Grove Elementary School and district-wide early childhood and 504 coordinator. So again, this is not going to be someone who is a full-time assistant principal. Right now, we have a half-time assistant principal and a half-time instructional coach. The goal here is removing the halftime instructional coach because I think probably of all the professional development and money we invested in resources, the instructional coach is the best bang for our buck. The direct impact it has on instruction and support for our personnel. So that would become a 1.0 FTE and then could serve the district wide in a better capacity than what our current Kelsey is currently as a halftime being able to do, just because there's only so many hours a day, obviously. So we'll get to that one in a minute, but does it make this 1.0 assistant principal? Then we're basically going to have a little more time that will aid the head principal, but there's still going to be a just early childhood coordinator and a 504 coordinator that will consume some of the time of that. So this isn't a 1.0 full-time assistant principal. Probably going to be more like a 0.65 somewhere, depending on what happens with seasonality. You know, when the early childhood grant is due, that's going to take more time. If there's a 504 case that pops up, that's going to take more time. But those aren't regularly scheduled events. That could be chunked out in times just based on need. So this is one we don't really get into a lot of the weeds of the district wide or the 504 coordinator and district wide early childhood, because there's a manual for that. It's a process that has to happen, and so it's really hard to put that in a job description other than they're going to be responsible for it. Right? So a little bit different scope than we saw in the last one. So essential function, duties, and responsibilities. I'll leave that up there and you can read through that. Let me know when you're ready to scroll down and I'll scroll down. We did get a kick out of number 2 under physical requirements. What are significant fine motor dexterity?
Yeah,
Hard to think. Again, the salary range on this one would be consistent with what we currently have with our current range of administrators. So it depends on days, contract days, and so forth, which would be consistent pretty much with what we currently have with assistant principal. Part-time assistant principal, they equate that to a full-time. Questions on that one? We'll move on to the next one. Everybody get a chance to read through it all? All right, then instructional coach. Take a moment and read through that one. I do want to highlight as you're reading through, this is a major change, is that it's not always, there hasn't been a degree in instructional coaching for a long time. So a lot of times instructional coach, maybe we're reading specialist or someone with more experience in that realm. But we are putting a preference though on finding someone that has an instructional coach or curriculum and instruction degree. It's not required, but that would be a preference since those are available now. I think that can bring a lot to the table. Those personnel would report directly to the curriculum director, Ms. Gentry. Their salary would be based on our licensed salary schedule. They'd be placed, just like a teacher would be placed on that one. This would not be an administrative position. This would be a licensed position on our salary schedule. So it depends on what their experiences are and their degrees are, where they'll be placed on that. As far as timelines go, if these are approved, the assistant principal / 504 and early childhood coordinator, as well as the instructional coach, would start in the 21-22 school or 22-23 school years, next school year. We would probably advertise the technology one immediately and then fill it as soon as we could. There's no reason to wait for that one, but we would use the process for the other two positions would be just like normal for a licensed staff. Start in the August contract.
I have a question, and I don't know if it belongs here or not, but when you were describing the second one, at the very end, you mentioned the salary, and it just had me wondering, do we have a salary schedule for administrators?
No.
Okay.
No. The only,
And is there a reason for that, or just?
not that I know of. The only district I know of in the state, which I haven't seeked that information, but the ones, Emporia has a salary schedule for administrators, but there's a lot of caveats to it. Number of at-risk kids, or at least when I was there, I haven't looked recently, number of at-risk kids, there's a lot of things that go into it. Every other district that I've ever known, they don't have one. I don't know why that is. It's usually based on negotiations, honestly, in the beginning, and person's experience and level of education and specific to what your needs are in that district, and you find someone. So I've never seen a district of Emporia that has a salary schedule, but I'm sure there are. I just haven't had experience with them. So I don't know why the districts that I've been associated with it I don't know why that is, other than probably it's just more specific to the individual in the negotiations when you hire. I think that you have to be fair in looking at salaries when we place administrators or new administrators on them, being fair to those who are currently there. Because we can get ourselves into some legal issues if we don't compensate. Equity and equality on those are important for why did we pay someone so much more than someone else? If we can't justify that, we could be in legal issues with that. And that has happened in other districts I know of where they paid someone differently and they couldn't justify that and they got sued and lost. So it's all based on history. Honestly, that's how I do it. When looking at salaries now, like, obviously we're hiring a new head high school principal and coming up with that salary is looking at what did the old one make, how many years of experience, what do new principals in the state of Kansas make, and where is that in between, and trying to find how we currently pay our local administrators and try to find where does that fit in that makes sense for us in our district. There's no science to it, unfortunately.
Wow. It piqued my interest.
Yeah, that's a good question.
All right, other thoughts or questions on the additional positions?
Mr. President, I move we approve the job descriptions and additional positions as listed below, including the district instructional coach / technology integration coordinator, the assistant technology director / staff technology trainer, and the assistant principal at Cones Grove Elementary School, early childhood coordinator, and District 504 coordinator, both as previously discussed at the October regular meeting and tonight.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Same.
I'm not going to try to read all that again. So if you guys have questions on her motion, you can ask her. But it's been moved and seconded that we approve the additional positions as presented.
Go ahead and vote on that.
Okay. Any discussion on that item? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Oh, sorry, let me unshare my screen, Adam and Scott. They can't see it, sorry. There we go.
All right, let's do this again. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? All right, so.
Yeah, and then one more thing, it was in our district site council meeting that got brought up, which I thought was really good conversation centered around our fine arts programs in the elementary school. currently, and I don't know how the history behind it, I'm sure those in the room can tell if you want to ask them that. But currently our PTO pays for the art experience at Prairie Heights, and then here at Council Grove Elementary School, PTO pays for half and district pays for half. I don't know how that all developed and the rhyme or reasoning behind it, but I think with the emphasis and the standards that go into fine arts, and I think our two, Lindsay and Bobby, do a fantastic and amazing job. They are amazing people and they've done wonders. So there's benefit to what they bring to the table, but they're not licensed art teachers that I know of. I don't believe they are licensed. So we've talked, it got brought up at site council about, is it time to move towards a licensed teacher, hiring a licensed art teacher for our elementary schools to be split between the two? There's a lot of components to go into that. One, about Amanda kind of lives on an island at the high school, and she is our art department for the district. And so with having a licensed art teacher who directly addressing the standards on a regular basis, because there are standards, there are fine arts art standards, just like there are math, reading, and science standards. I believe Bobby and Lindsay try to address those the best they can. However, they only meet with those kids once a week, maybe if that sometimes, or every other week. So it's impossible to address those on a regular basis, or even cover enough when they get to Amanda at the high school that they have a depth or base of knowledge that she can take and work with and continue to push them to get involved in a higher level of art at that high school level when it becomes an opportunity to do so. So I think it warrants to continue the discussion. It's not anything we need to decide tonight. I just wanted to bring it up tonight, but I think we need to continue that discussion. But if we're going to do that, two questions come to mind. Funding, how are we going to fund them? And we need a schedule in place to show how we could use that person. So one, the funding piece, I think we can allocate as long as things don't get disrupted this year in the state legislature, but there is one more round of base aid increased funding underneath the current formula by law that's in place. So we could do what we've done in the past and allocate some of those funds for this position and use those new base aid monies to fund it. So we wouldn't have to find money in our general fund right now to do that. So we can cover the funding aspect for this. The second part we talked about today in our admin meeting, and the elementary principals are going to work on coming up with a schedule that we can see how would this person be used and be supported, and kind of basically show how can we justify that and how it will work. I think the important thing to remember is that now our schedules in the elementary school are based on having an art program, because that's when our teachers do their PLCs. That's when they get together and meet, go over the data that we just heard about that is doing so well right now. There's got to be time in the day built in for them to plan that and have discussions around that. And right now they use the art time to do that. So it's an essential piece, not only in the standards and the fine arts aspect of the kids' education, but it's also critical for our schedules, for our teachers to have that time they can collaborate and look at that data to make those decisions that are yielding fantastic results right now. So just keep that in the back of your head. I think we need to continue that discussion. We can't put it off too long, because if we are going to do that, we need to find our teachers aren't growing on trees. We need to advertise it and find that person for next year if we're going to move that direction. So talk about, think about it. We'll bring it up, put it on the next agenda as a discussion again. And then if we want to move, we can, but probably in the February board meeting, then we need to make a decision whether we want to really look at moving forward to that or not. With that being said, I think it's time that we quit having the PTOs pay for the art program that they have now. I think it's time the district should probably take our responsibility and pay for that. It's been awesome that the PTOs have done that, but it's a strain on them to come up with that kind of money to do so. So I know Deidre was at the site council meeting and she approached me afterwards. And so about doing that and had a discussion with me about that. So I'll let her see if she wants to amend the agenda to make that motion.
Yes, sure, absolutely. So I would offer an amendment to the agenda that we cover the cost of art at Prairie Heights and Council Grove Elementary for the rest of this school year. And in the meantime, administration reevaluates and finds out need and availability for an art teacher full-time for next school year.
Second.
Going to vote on the amendment to the motion. the agenda and then vote to make the motion.
So the first item up here is we've got a motion and a second to amend the agenda to vote on paying for the art program for the remainder of the year. So we're gonna add that item to the agenda right now, is all we're doing.
Correct.
Okay? Questions on that motion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all opposed? All right, now the second motion that I heard you say was
You're doing great.
it's been moved and seconded that we actually cover that cost for the remainder of the year. Discussion on that item. I have a question. What kind of a cost does that come at?
So at Prairie Heights, they pay, comes up to about 3,000 a year, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere around 3,000 a year. Here at Council Grove, it's around 4,000 or something because they meet more often because there's more kids. It's not that the kids get more exposure, they have to have more frequency. So I think it's 4,700. Does that sound right?
Well, it's 200 a week.
Yeah. So.
And PTO pays half.
So it's not a huge ticket item, but it is, I mean, it is
Right.
something that's gonna have to be budgeted for. I mean, it's.
But those numbers you gave, we would be on the hook for half of that for the remainder of this year. Okay. All right. Other comments, questions about that?
Less than 5,000.
Do we have that money in the budget?
Yeah, we'll be able to pay for it out of some of the relief money that we deviated elsewhere to pay for this. So yeah, we could pay for it.
All right, any other discussion on this item? To restate the motion and second, it's that we cover the cost of the art teachers for the remainder of this year. Am I paraphrasing that correctly? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? So passed.
Just a little bit of history on that, Mr. Jody. I think that the reason that happens is because we have not had an in-district art teacher in those grade levels for a long time. And PTO saw a need and an opportunity during the fundraiser to bring those people back into the building. So I know that was an opportunity. And we had volunteers from the community that stepped up each time that we've asked to do that. So I think it's fantastic that PTO saw a need and filled those in both of our buildings and continue to do that.
Absolutely. And I think this would be the appropriate time to say thank you to our PTOs, our parents, our businesses, and the individuals who help sponsor that through their donations. There has been a huge impact. I just think it's time for us to, I mean, we need to put our money where our mouth is. Fine arts are important, and we say that, but if we're not paying for it and we're expecting PTO to pay for it, really, I think sends a mixed message. So I appreciate, I don't remember what parent brought it up, but I appreciate the parent who brought it up, and she wasn't advocating to pay for it. She was just kind of inquiring more information, which started the conversation. So I'm glad it got out there.
All right, good. Next action item is the January meeting date.
Yep, we just need to make a motion to move from our regular scheduled meeting that was published to that Wednesday, the 12th, I believe, the 12th.
Yes.
Mr. President, I move we approve the reschedule of the date of our regular school board meeting from Monday, January 10th to Wednesday, January 12th.
Moved and seconded that we move the regularly scheduled board meeting in January from Monday the 10th to Wednesday the 12th. Any further discussion on that item? All in favor? raise your right. Oh,
I just had, the time stayed the same, correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, Adam, but yes, time will stay the same. We voted 7-0 there, Bryson. So that one passes. Next item will be an executive session for personnel. Scott, did you get my voicemail today?
Yes, I did.
All right, perfect. I didn't want you jumping in the truck and coming this way if you didn't have to, so.
Well, I got an email, put that way.
Okay.
Is the email still good?
They can just stay online.
Yeah, just stay online, it'll be fine. Was that part of that Zoom email that I didn't open and read probably? So yeah, So we'll have an executive session here. I don't know if there'll be any action coming out of that.
No action.
No, it will not be. What do you think? Time-wise?
Let's be optimistic. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Let's go 10 minutes.
Let's go 10 minutes, but let's start at 8:20.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Doty and the board, is that all we need? Mr. Doty and the board?
Yes, we
Yep.
think so, but let's make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start at 8:20.
Okay,
Let's take a short break.
Mr. President, I'm going to be going to an executive session at 8:20 to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exemption under COMA with Mr. Doty and the board.
Moved and seconded, we have an executive session starting at 8:20. Remind me how long?
10 minutes,
For 10 minutes.
20 minutes, sorry.
20 minutes.
No, he said
You said 10.
I said 10, but I meant, since it's really gonna be. 20.
Miles is messing with me.
20's better.
All right, for 10 minutes.
So we may need to change topics depending on our conversation. So it's good to
That's
come out
okay.
anyhow, so we can make a new motion. to go
Yep.
in underneath different parameters.
Discussion on that item. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? All right, thanks everybody for coming.
We're going to get out of executive session.
No one wants to stick around. you have to stick around. Do you want to be?
Hey,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Just making a note about it.
Hey, guys, hang in there.
So we need to make sure that.
There we go.
I'm gonna shut
Sorry.
all down there. Since there's no
See you guys,
motion.
thanks.
Oh,
Bye. Oh, no.
It's all right. You're the second person to do that. It's okay. Jamie did it too.
I know, yep.
You broke my cord.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I actually.
It could have been me, Miles. I picked it first.
Yeah, blame her.
All right. Got wide shoulders, it's
That'd be
fine.
amazing if it still worked.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Miles.
I figured so, but.
Yeah.
So,
We all need a break.